Liberal Currents presents Half the Answer with your hosts, Caitlin M. Green and Trent R. Nelson.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Half the Answer, where knowing what question to ask is half the answer. I am Caitlin M. Green, linguist and question asker extraordinaire, and with me is my friend Trent R. Nelson, historian, editor, genius, just guy who talks real good. And we are so excited to bring you a new guest today. Trent, who do we have?
Well, as you brought me the wonderful Katie Tellman, I must return the favor. I have with me today Dr. Melissa Fisher Paoni, and she is just marvelous. She is a licensed clinical psychologist and certified school psychologist in Springfield, Illinois, the capital of the great state of Illinois, Lincoln's state. And, I've had the pleasure of speaking with Dr. Paoni before. Absolutely brilliant as it concerns children interfacing with technology, with social media. Really, really comprehensive stuff. And we're super grateful that you found some time to chat with us this morning. Good morning, Dr. Paoni. How are you?
Good morning. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Well, we love to learn, and you're talking about some really important stuff because, of course, we all know that the children are our future, but that really is, in the literal sense, quite crucial that we don't treat them poorly. And sometimes the host of this program feels like maybe we treat them poorly without realizing that we are. We think that maybe we're doing them a solid by giving them an iPad because, pads are fun and fantastic, right? But are we really giving them as much as we could be? Most importantly, perhaps our time.
That's right. I think it's easy to give a child like an iPad or tablet to help them self-soothe, but then we don't really teach them how to do that. And then we create this pattern of conditioning where they're almost addicted to the device in order to self-soothe. And there's research out there that suggests that if we give toddlers age 3 to 5 preschoolers tablets to self-soothe, and they really have executive function problems later. They really don't know how to self-soothe.
Okay, this gets into one of my big questions, actually, because I think that this is one of the cases where I'm a little out of touch because I live in a place where I never see toddlers with iPads, right? I think this might be my social circle. This might be my socioeconomic situation that it's not something I see. I really wanted to know, how prevalent is it that, a 2-year-old is being given or a 1-year-old is being given an iPad to play with?
It's very prevalent. I don't know that I have the exact statistics on that, but I think it was like 98% of all households have some kind of smart device. And toddlers, or I shouldn't say toddlers. It's true. Toddlers do use tablets, but little ones do have access to iPads and devices, probably more than we are aware.
Right. And again, you think back to our own childhoods, Caitlin, and, we had interface with the cassette player, right? Or perhaps the television remote if we were watching TV, right? And mom wasn't there, or a CD player. But it feels, and Dr. Paoni, it feels as though with our the hastening of the technological innovations that we make, that technology is integrated with the children faster than it might have been at another time, no? Right.
And I was just looking at some other studies, and they're studying the effects of infants. So the if infants have time with a screen, how much it affects their later brain development. So there's enough of infants and toddlers who do have screen time that we're studying that. And when we're noticing that it affects their brain development.
So I read some of your articles that you've written in sort of public facing places like Psychology Today, and I know you distinguish pretty carefully between different kinds of screens and kinds of activities on screens. So I always like to try to figure out, like, what are the activities that very young children are doing when they're interacting with screens?
Well, what are they doing, or what should they be doing? Because those are
I would like to know both.
So, again, if parents are handing their little one a device because they're having a fit, or they're not wanting to sit quietly in the restaurant or go to the store, that's something that they're doing. But what's the issue is that they're watching like these short, intense videos with lots of like screen changes, and they're visually exciting, and so it's releasing dopamine, and so they're going to want more of that. What we should be doing is, I think the American Academy of Pediatrics just revamped their screen time recommendations, and now 18 months and younger, no screens at all. 18 months to 2 years is limit screen time, but you're watching with your parent. So your parent is sitting down with you watching an educational show and talking about it with them. So it's not just free reign where they're on YouTube, they're watching one video after the next. So then you get into this like homogenous algorithm of the same kind of content over and over and over again, which actually creates like an OCD kind of behavior with the screen time.
So I always wondered about this because I let my kids watch Ms. Rachel because they're very small. And I was like, I'm not sure how I feel about this, partly because there's like phonics and, educational content in it, but the rapid changing of the image did kind of worry me a little bit, because I felt like these segments were so short. Then I thought back to like Sesame Street when I was a kid, and it was kind of like that too. Like, is it substantively different? I'm not 100% sure, but at least I was watching it with them. I guess that's a point for me.
Absolutely. It's the fast-paced movements, the screen changes that you have to like cognitively adjust to. But if it's educational, you're sitting with your parent, you're talking about these things with your child, that's the best scenario.
Yeah. And it's pretty much always just the one lady. She's just got a different green screen behind her.
But Dr. Paoni, isn't this really actually touching upon something that we talk about as it relates to just all individuals in this type of age? The rapid succession of 5 to 10 to 15 second videos. They have done something, I don't want to say eroded our ability to pay attention for longer. I think it is, as I think we spoke about in the last chat, I think it is actually sort of an evolutionary innovation, right? We are getting more videos in quicker succession, and so the younger people, their brains can take them. I don't want to watch 10 to 15 second videos because my brain doesn't function like that. I want to watch like something that's like half an hour. I want to read like a book. Like I want to like get involved in it. And the children seem to be quite happy to just like be passing through in this like very quick superficiality. What can you say about that?
It does affect them in a negative way, though. And I think we need to look at the big picture here, because there's lots of evidence that there's executive functioning deficits for kids who watch a lot of screens. So what the research was showing is anything over 4 hours a day is excessive, but everyone is doing that. So what then we're finding is that we've got the prefrontal cortex is affected. So we have difficulty controlling our impulses and emotional regulation and like task persistence to sit and do something that isn't like fast paced and visually inviting, that we have to sit and read or listen to a teacher. It's, I hear the word, it's boring. Everything's boring because they don't have that dopamine rush like they do with those fast-paced videos. So it does affect their brain in a way that is going to really create some challenges in terms of being able to have sustained attention, because now it's kind of fragmented. You've got enough bandwidth for, this 30-second video, but then you want more of that. And so on the other hand, you aren't able to sit and do something that it might be more traditionally educational, or even just to go outside and play. I mean, the play-based interactions that we have as kids helps create these great neural pathways that are going to be so limited if we're basing our play on technology.
Okay, so this brings up a couple of questions that I have. One of them is, whenever I read about kind of kids and technology in the news or see it on TV or, all the various places where you get your media, I see people comparing screen use to other addictions. So like opioids, cocaine, heroin, alcohol, sugar. And I wanted to know how justified that is, if we're seeing in a substantial number of young people the kind of addictive behaviors that you would see with those kinds of substances.
And I think the research is kind of pointing in that direction, that they're addicted related cravings due to dopamine activity in young brains, and it's related to this constant homogeneous content that's fueled by algorithms. We have higher rates of OCD in kids if they have higher levels of screen time. We have compulsive repetitive behaviors that are linked to like damaged white matter. I mean, there was a headline that caught my attention: toddlers given tablets, phone to play can suffer lasting brain damage. And I mean, that sounds outrageous, but I think we're finding evidence that that's the case. And so when we're talking about things like addiction related behaviors, we see that in that, we have this hyper arousal and the binge watching of things because of FOMO, and it's all related to addiction related kinds of behaviors.
Oh, wow. Okay. I looked it up and I see a picture of some babies looking at a tablet. It gave me that like visceral parent, like, no feeling.
So Dr. Paoni, you mentioned just a moment ago this sort of persistence, right? This sort of like task persistence, as you called it. Mm-hmm. It strikes me that so many of the needs or perhaps even passions or desires in our life are multi-stepped, long, drawn-out processes. They are not 15 to 30-second innovations. Mm-hmm. You talk about lasting impacts. Well, how difficult might it be for children, for young people as they grow to go about attempting to accomplish some of these complex, multi-tier developed innovations for themselves if they are looking for that 15 to 30-second payoff constantly?
It's tough. And so they have to learn, like secondarily, when otherwise, we would have just been expecting that kind of behavior. But if they are, and it depends on your generation, I guess, right? So like, what is it, Gen Z that had the devices around puberty? Is it Gen Alpha now that they just have it? As soon as they're born, they have the technology. So if they are growing up with this in their hand, like they can access anything that they want to, then we have to teach them task persistence. We have to provide like structured technology breaks. And I think we also have to then supply them with other things to do, because if they have this need to have their dopamine rush with their device, we have to help them understand how to take breaks, but also do things like what you're talking about, Trent, like stepwise progression to finish a task, like building something or going outside and doing something that they wouldn't typically do, like a treasure hunt or something. They have to engage in those steps, and we have to guide them to do that.
So we have to be creating a situation where parents and guardians are able to spend the time and the energy to create activities and to create like a safe but adventurous kind of zone for the kids to be able to play in. Do you find that adults are having trouble finding their way to doing that kind of stuff?
Well, sure, because if they have a child who is maybe acting out or whining and they have the device, then they're quiet. And so I feel like we as the parents have to recognize we're also doing it though. I mean, we're also scrolling and spending a lot of time on the devices, and kids are watching us. And so we have to model that we are also taking some breaks from technology. But it's not fair for us then to continue to use our devices and say, you don't get your iPad now for the next 2 hours. And then if we understand their brain is looking for this dopamine rush, and we're saying just no, then we have to give them something else to do. We have to supply them with, here are some options that we can do, but we can do them together. That's even better. But going outside and playing and exploring and, having that cause and effect right there with your play skills, that's wonderful. That's what we want for our kids.
This may be a little bit outside of your sphere, but do you notice that there are kind of like structural barriers for people, parents, to be able to have that kind of energy and time to do those things?
Well, it may be that, just the lack of time. If we have working parents and we're taking kids from one thing to the next or activities, and I'm sure that just the time is critical. And it might be easier to use a device.
As you're talking about all of this, right, and you're teaching us, and we really appreciate it, Doctor, as you're saying all of this, though, it strikes me that this sort of process for properly raising the child, it's going to require that the adults change. Right? We must innovate ourselves because we are greedy. We say, Johnny, we're not doing any more iPad time right now, babe. Right? But then we're like, all right, time for the dopamine hit. Like I'm going on Twitter, right? I'm going on Blue Sky. I'm going on Facebook. I'm talking to my friends, and we need to go out and have a treasure hunt, don't we, Dr. Paoni? We need to go out and like read a book with Susie in the park, like we did in the good old days.
And it's tough. I mean, because we're conditioned to that too. Like, well, what did I miss? And let me just scroll for just a little bit. And then, a half hour later, you're still doing it. So we have to recognize that that's a pattern that we need to change. Right. And we know that even with adults, the higher the screen use, the higher the depression, higher anxiety, and more physical problems. I mean, we're not as healthy if we're on the screens more. So, and one thing that caught my attention too when looking at this was kids who are on screens more have lower bone density. I mean, it's a physical problem if kids are using screens too much.
Yeah, I think just looking around at the parents around me, like our lives have changed a lot. In one sense, we have these jobs that kind of never let us live, our phone now has Slack or whatever on it, and you get pinged by your coworkers and your manager all the time. Like you're never really off the clock. And people get, increasing hours of work each week. They get so tired. We don't have an economic setup where most people can have a parent stay home, like there's just so much going on that we want parents to change their behavior, but we, have to think about what their lives are like and how it impacts the way that they can parent. Maybe we can just like have community things. Couldn't we just have community stuff? At my kid's school, there's a parent who just declares like, we're going to this playground at this time, and it's every week, and whoever's available just shows up and we go play. And I have the only one I've missed is when it was below freezing. I didn't want to go out. It was too much.
So, Dr. Paoni, are those some, like, to piggyback off of what Caitlin was just saying, like, are those, is that what we're missing? As a larger sense of community, a larger sense of children to be with, of adults that we can trust our children with, of safe spaces where the children can be, and we don't have to say, oh, where's Susie? I'm worried, right? It'd be easier if they were just watching Bluey on the iPad. So
what I've been seeing is a trend of, like I would say in the olden days when I was a kid, the idea was you go out and play, and there wasn't this sense of worry from parents about where you're going, who you're going to be with, and I'm sure that that's different depending on where you are and who you're living around, but we're losing that. So we have like overprotective parents in terms of where their kids are and like physically where they're at, but not enough maybe regulation of what they're doing online. So it's a little backwards there. Like we probably need to be more vigilant about what they're doing online, but then allowing some more freedom in terms of their play, so that they do have a more play-based kind of childhood. And I like the idea of the community too, though, because when we're talking about what are the recommendations, what do we do when we say no screen time? Well, we need to have those options. We need to have like maybe a community dinner or a community game night or whatever, so that we have things to look forward to that aren't based on technology.
So yeah, I'm a like straight down the line millennial, 1989 birth year. So I do think that maybe my upbringing was a little atypical in that my mom was always worried about my physical body and where I was, and always knew exactly where I was for like the whole time. But also was highly suspicious of the whole internet as a phenomenon. So it is always important for me to like zoom out and figure out what the majority of people had, because I would categorize it as restrictive. I don't know that I would categorize it as like the wrong choice, but it was certainly much more restrictive than my peers. So that's always interesting to hear about. And we live in a place where basically as soon as you leave my property, the infrastructure of the place that you enter into, I would categorize as like highly unsafe for a body. So you walk off of my driveway onto a road that has no bike lane, no sidewalk, just cars. So like I am having to wrap my mind around the fact that I'm never really gonna be comfortable saying, okay, kiddos, like go to the playground, I'll see you later, because to get to the playground, they have to navigate a lot of traffic and they have to get across some like really weird structures. They have to cross a river. It's not great. So,
and like I said, I think it depends on where you live. Like I grew up like out in a rural area where I had family living around me. And so it was super safe to like come back at dusk, and
when the street lights go on, you come home, right?
It's very dependent on where you live. So
yeah, fortunately, there's places they can play on the property. So I do. There are 3 and 5, and I already do just shove them out the door, and I'm like, go play on your bikes.
Yeah,
come in if someone gets hurt.
But that is really, again, as we're talking to Dr. Melissa Paoni, it seems to me that we have to really make an effort to not only like offer different things that the children can do, but offer some excitement along with them and take part in them so that we sort of foster, like we do with anything else, right? Mom or dad will read with us. And then all of a sudden, perhaps we will enjoy reading. And it's the same thing with anything, right? Go take a walk with your child, and all of a sudden your child will be like, I want to go see the forest, but they do not have the ability. They don't have the reference points to just come out all of a sudden and be like, I want to go and do this. Like, if they've never done it before, how would they know? So again, and I would like to maybe do a slow pivot. The children, they go online, they watch videos.
Cocomelon, whatever, yeah.
Right. They're doing all their thing, right? But while they're doing that, children who are perhaps just a little bit older, and certainly adults, well, they're going on social media. And they are spending a lot of time on social media, hyperfixating on what Fred from high school has achieved in the 13 years since they've hung out. And he feels real bad about himself as a result of this, right? Because Fred's life looks incredible. And of course, he doesn't see that Fred's gone through like 2 divorces and like has a bad job that he doesn't like, right? We only see Fred just came back from Thailand and it looked fantastic, right? What are we to do to sort of, as we're trying to think about how to release the children from this sort of technological thraldom, how do we escape it ourselves?
Again, we have to recognize that, like what you just said. And as adults, sometimes we don't actually have that filter when we're looking at, someone from high school or whatever. But to recognize that, it is a highly filtered image that we're seeing. And we want to talk to our kids about that. But social media in particular is super damaging to young women in terms of their self-esteem. There's a higher rate of eating disorders and depression. Because we have this constant like negative comparison that's happening when we're seeing images on the screen. And so we have to recognize that as adults, that happens to us as well. And so having that discussion is really important. But like the Surgeon General recommended, no social media for anyone under 13, but I thought maybe there was a 16 that somebody recommended too, because
Jonathan Haidt wants 16. I know that. I think he's got like kind of a movement behind him.
Well, it is damaging, and a lot of kids who are younger than 13 get on social media because they lie about their age. I know when my daughter was like 12, she's like, can I get on Facebook? Nobody wants Facebook anymore, but what does the rule say? The rule says you have to be 13 and you're not 13. So on her 13th birthday, she got on, but I was, a friend of hers on Facebook. And I think, parents have to be watching what their kids are doing. I mean, not like overly so that you're invading their privacy, but it is damaging. And so if we're scrolling and looking at what other people are doing and comparing it to ourselves, that can affect how we feel about ourselves. And
yeah. Exactly. Okay. So I wanted to ask you about this. I've got, again, I just am looking at what is being directed at me as a non-expert, and it is conflicting. So I'm getting even just like, I'm just looking at the Washington Post and I'm going to see a headline that says social media destroys children's brains. It makes them depressed. It makes them anxious. And then I have another one that says the research has failed to find a causal link between, mental health and social media use. Here's what you need to know. And it's all like, we don't know. So as a parent, I'm now kind of frozen, right? I'm paralyzed because I don't know what's happening or how scared to be or what to do about it. So for you, you're thinking like, okay, you really need to at least have started puberty before you touch a social media account. Do you feel like people in their teen years, 16, 17, 18, are being emotionally and mentally damaged by social media use?
So I would say that it depends. Because if there are some positive aspects to social media. And so we have to acknowledge that. There are a lot of marginalized individuals who feel like they find their community through social media, and it's a real positive for them. And there are other aspects of social media that maybe they can like try out a different identity, or they can just really explore their who they are and what's important to them. And so we don't want to take that away from them. But on the other hand, if they are just continually like looking at other people and doing that negative comparison, there are studies that suggest the more you do that, then the higher incidence of depression that's correlated with that. So I guess as a parent, I would be concerned enough about that again, like, what are you doing on social media? What is it? Just like you're just looking at other people and then feeling badly about yourself? Right. Or are you engaging in some constructive, connecting to other people?
Right.
So this feels like something that as a parent, you kind of can discern a little bit, right? Like, my child has a tendency towards anxiety and like depressive kind of moods. And I watch her log on and she gets worse. I can see that, right? Or my child is having just like the best time ever pretending to be, like a hedgehog with pink hair or whatever. Like, they're having a great time. Like, they're just talking with their friends, having an awesome experience. Like, you can kind of see before and after what your kid's mood is like and respond accordingly.
Yes, but it might not be like an immediate, as soon as they get off the device. I mean, it might be a cumulative effect where they're kind of rehashing some things in their mind that we just need to talk to them. Yeah. I mean, talk to your kids.
It sounds like, time with your kids, energy to focus on your kids, energy to come up with things to do with your kids. That's like the ultimate answer, isn't it?
Right. And again, like, when we walk down the street and we interact with people, they are as vulnerable as people as we are. And by that, I mean, there can be less glossing over their lives in those moments where we are face to face having communication with them. Whereas on our social media platforms, we do project whether who we'd like to be or who we feel ourselves to be or the best parts of our existence. And I think it is so easy, whether you're a young girl or a boy or anyone, I think it's easy for us to lose sight of the fact that no one is posting that the toilet just got plugged up. All right. Mm-hmm. No one is posting that I burned all my food or that my partner is mad at me. We don't post those things. We post, Thailand was great, and I can't wait to go back again in 6 months, right? And now everyone is left being like, oh man, I've never even been to Thailand, not one time, right?
Not even one time.
Not even one time have I seen the elephants, and now I feel bad about myself. How can we sort of take back our self-esteem? How can we find pleasure and joy in not these goals, these beautiful, shiny goals that we see other people, but in the journey to get success to some degree?
It's just your daily like feelings of gratefulness and recognizing that this is what's happening with me today, and this is and teaching our kids that, like, to kind of be in the moment, to appreciate what we have in the moment, and that's kind of the antithesis of like screen time, like noticing what's around you, noticing that the birds are chirping and the sun's coming up, and the things that we might not notice if we're distracted. So I guess that just kind of being grounded into the moment, using community, and doing some other things to make us more active.
I feel that what's happening right now is that I'm being told to touch grass, and I really resent that because I'm not in the habit.
What do we say? What do we say in the group chat? Recently, it's touch grass or touch the stove, right? It's one of touch the grass or touch the stove.
Maybe all the stove touching is a bit a result of our failure to touch grass in the past.
There we go. There we go. Life lessons from Caitlin.
Yeah. Yeah, we're all gonna start saying that now. Don't touch the stove, touch the grass. So yeah, I think that what we're looking at is a need to step back from the online, connections that don't serve us, hold on to the ones that do, and be kind of ruthless about discerning between the two of them. What I want to know, because, my kids are entering school age, is what are your thoughts about like school policies about technology use? What would be kind of your ideal, if you're running a school, what would be the policy at that school for how kids should be separated from their devices or allowed to use their devices, using devices as part of a lesson, basically the whole spectrum of possible use of technology?
And that's a tough question because a lot of kids now, like my pediatric patients, have Chromebooks at school all day. So there can be wonderful things that they can access through their Chromebook. And they can all have like this collective experience where they are learning something that's available to them on the screen that's guided by their teacher. So that's great. So we don't want to take anything away from them.
Okay, good, because I do that as a teacher. We do the Kahoot quizzes and stuff. Like I hope we can keep doing that because I do really like it.
Yeah, I think that's really beneficial. I guess it's, the type of screen use. That's really what it comes down to. Like if you have teenagers that have their phone and they're just scrolling through like in their study hall or something, that's not necessarily helping them. But I have mixed feelings about like taking phones away from kids too, because that's their social connection. And I hear from my teens too, like, well, what if there's a school shooting, and I don't have access to my phone? So they're anxious about not having it. But I guess it's just responsible use, like
right.
How we define that. Like if you can have access to your phone, but just keep it in your bag or your pocket or whatever.
Yeah, I saw something that said that your average teenager gets something like almost 300 notifications a day, which is like extremely detrimental to your ability to hold focus on something if your pocket's like vibrating all the time.
Right.
And so maybe like a policy where notifications are silent. Like, can you put your phone in do not disturb mode for the school day or for, any period where you have a class anyway.
And you can check it. And you can check it when you're in the hallway, right? Or you go to the bathroom
and
or something.
See if you missed anything during class, right? Yeah. So, right. As a teacher, I have a policy that you can have your phone on your person or in your backpack, but if I see it with my eyes, then it has to sit on my desk for the rest of the period, which I've seen other teachers kind of do. Like I didn't come up with that on my own. And I hope that that's a reasonable policy, but I am interested in knowing if I should change it.
That seems reasonable. But I like what you mentioned about like the notifications that's going to fragment your attention. Like even if they're invested in what the teacher is saying, but you've got like 3 notifications, you're thinking, oh, I wonder who that is. I wonder if it's so-and-so. And so you're already not giving your full attention. The other thing about notifications is there's some studies that were done with teens and having their phones in their room. It messes up their sleep because even if they have good intentions to put their phones down, there's the notifications that disrupt that sleep cycle. And so sleep is completely affected by screen use and having phones proximate to where you're sleeping.
So using those like device management features that are in your phone is good because you can put it in sleep mode or whatever, and then it won't buzz at you during the night. I have a brother, and he is 12 years younger than me. So he's actually Gen Z. And so I've actually learned about some of the things that you can get to help you with devices from him because he knows more about it than me. So he's got he's got a box that he literally locks his phone in at night because he doesn't want to, because he doesn't even want to be tempted. Like, he has to give himself a couple of steps in between himself and the phone. Mm-hmm. And that is enough to make him be like, actually, I don't need to check my phone right now. I'm trying to sleep. Mm-hmm. And I had no idea about these boxes until he told me about them.
And I've recommended to my teams, like, if you're going to charge your phone in your room, put it on the other side of the room, like on a dresser, face down, with your notifications off. So if same principle, like, well, then I have to get out of bed and go walk over there, and maybe I really don't need to do that.
But I'm so warm in my blanket. Maybe I'll just go back to sleep. Yeah, good.
And if the alarm goes off in the morning, then you have to get up.
Right.
And then I'm already up, so.
Well, that was a trick I learned a long time ago, is as somebody who doesn't like to use the alarm, you have to put the alarm clock on the other side of the room. So you have to get up and you have to turn it off. And then once you're up, then, now I have to go do the doctor. Again, this whole discussion has been brilliant. And every time we chat, I'm struck with new mental innovations. It seems to me that this is, we have this great tool in our grasp. We have the internet, we have all the wonderful things that computers can do, and yet it seems to me that we are not adequately teaching the youth, and therefore the later adults are not understanding how to best utilize this tool, right? We have a tool that can find anything that humans have figured out, and yet, as we've noted across this entire discussion, we are oftentimes more interested in, like, what like Jolene has been up to, right? We haven't spoken with her in some time, and we are really, like, looking forward to seeing, like, how she's been, right?
Right. Or like the influencer who sells detox tea or whatever, like,
right. We
the
could
micro celebrity who's hurting us with their product.
Yes, we could be learning Latin. We could be learning Moldovan, right? But we are not. We are learning about
Latin.
We could.
What are you going to do with
Latin.
it?
Well, I can talk to my linguist friend about
learn
words.
French, then you can talk to me.
Un peu. But I guess the point, Dr. Paoni, how do we sort of reset our how we go about educating and teaching and sort of set the ground rules for what the internet does, right? The hammer, it builds. But if we don't teach that it builds, well, then it just destroys, doesn't it?
But I think what you said is important, is like, we have all these wonderful things, but we don't actually teach kids how to use it properly. And so that would be something that maybe could be integrated in with the education, where, it's good and there's a lot of positive aspects to it, but we need to limit it. And that's really important for your developing brain. But also to teach them things like online safety, and like how to make sure that something is legitimate, or even just like courteous, like online behavior, to teach kids that, because I think when you're behind a screen, you can say whatever you want, and it's very hurtful sometimes. So I think just teaching kids these basics about how to use it, how to limit it appropriately, and how to be respectful. Those are things that we can do to young kids.
Sure. Something that's maybe an artifact of teachers being adults and students being in a completely different generation is we don't always know what we need to know to teach them. Right. We're teaching them the stuff we learned when technology was totally different. We need to we need to get trained to figure out what's happening now and what they would like to know. It's a good thing we talked to Katie Tallhelm earlier, who is a public librarian and who does do some of this. Like at the library, they can teach you a lot. So that's nice. The other thing is, being around middle schoolers and high schoolers, I can tell that they want to know how to keep themselves safe. I can tell that they're concerned about screen addiction, cyberbullying, privacy protections. And so I think that like it doesn't have to be an adversarial framing of like grownups trying to keep kids away from stuff, as opposed to working with kids to all learn together how to keep ourselves safe from the various dangers that exist on the internet.
Right. And if we teach them things like turning off your notifications or putting your phone in safe mode or whatever, those are really good tools for them. But there are a lot of tools out there for parents as well. A couple of them are like waituntil8th.org. It's trying to keep kids off social media. And then the other one is Protect Young Eyes. It's .com about settings that parents can use for limiting access to.
That one's great. I looked at that, and it's just instructions for like every device and every like website you can think of for how to change the settings to help keep kids a little bit safer. That's so interesting.
And to your point, Dr. Paoni, we recently here, actually in Springfield, had a YMCA sponsored event where the children actually held court and were trying to educate the adults on cybersecurity, on cyber safety, right? Because as you just noted, Caitlin, the children, they are waist deep, chest deep in this. And so they often have a better understanding of some of these things than the adults do.
In some ways, they know more about the lay of the land than we do, for sure. Yeah, that's a good point. So you talked about sort of the balance, right, between protecting children and keeping on the right side of being overly repressive or overly surveilling them. And to that angle, I wanted to ask if you had any thoughts about legislation that's been coming up about age verification. Like there's a couple of states that have passed laws that say you have to verify through some kind of ID or a parental verification that you are 13 years old before you can open Facebook or Instagram.
Well, I don't know like if that in itself is repressive at all, but I feel like if the ultimate goal is to keep young kids off of social media until they're ready, I would say that that's probably appropriate. Mm-hmm. Just because the kids get around it, and they're signing on TikTok or whatever based on a false birth date. So I think that's probably going to be helpful, but I don't know that much about it, so I don't want to speak too much about it.
Sure. So yeah, I'm pretty protective of my privacy. Like every website I've ever signed into, I gave them a different birth date to my real one because I don't think they should have that. And it turns out, like interacting with hospitals and things, they basically use your date of birth as verification that it's you. So I'm like, I don't really want to talk to other people about what my birth date is. And same for my kids. Like I think for me, it is a step too far to ask them to get like a government issued ID and then give that to Mark Zuckerberg to be like, please let me access your website. Like I do find that a little bit hinky, but that's maybe like a parent to parent decision.
Right.
Well, Dr. Paoni, I mean, always such a pleasure to get to chat with you and to pick your brain over some of these really important concepts. We're talking about the children now, just as we've been speaking about the children in past episodes, Caitlin, right? But really, all of our discussion about the children now, well, we're just talking about the future adults a little bit early, aren't we? We have to figure out how best to structure our world such that the children can find success. And as Caitlin, I think you beautifully noted, we're at a disadvantage because we're not living their lives. Their lives are different than ours. And so we sort of have to, sort of be present and futuristic, right? What is best for now, but what are the people that we're trying to help? What are they thinking now? Is it the same as we are? Probably not.
Yeah, I think one thing is I would really love to see us as a discourse step back from catastrophizing about teenagers being sort of like, monsters because of their social media use, or one of these big books that came out was The Anxious Generation, and it's really freaked a lot of people out because it maybe goes a little bit too far over the line of saying like, oh, well, we've driven all of the children insane and now they're ruining the world because we drove them insane by giving them technology. And, maybe we can step back and think about the young people as real people who we can work together with to help create a healthier relationship with technology. And maybe instead of, yelling at the kids for being different than we wanted them to be, we can work with them, and we can also work with them to maybe restrict the ability of these technologies to mess with us the way that they do.
Right. And you mentioned that, kids want to be healthy. They want to know, what guidelines might be appropriate. And I think if we teach them that, if that's kind of embedded in their education, that we have to teach kids about technology, what the positive aspects are, what the negative aspects are, and how to limit yourself, and how to monitor your own mental health as it relates to technology use. I think those are important things.
And I want to see more legislators fall in line behind my guy, Ron Wyden. He's my senator here in Oregon, because he's the only one who actually knows how any of these technologies work. It's important, right, that we as older people and as people who are in charge of stuff, learn about it. We got to know how it works before we can make rules about it.
Now, I really appreciate that, the whole catastrophizing idea. We really do need to take a step back. I absolutely agree. I mean, in the past episode, I made a joke about the children having been in the coal mines 110 years ago. And the reason I brought that up was not to glorify the terrible nature of their predicament, right? But to highlight the resilience of human people. Right? We are not morally dissolved by learning information any more than we are morally dissolved by being sent to do some barbarous task that we shouldn't be doing at 8. We just keep on, and we have to be cogent and cognitive enough to realize that, oh, wait, you know what? Maybe the children need a little bit of guidance as it concerns how to use this most brilliant of all tools. And maybe if we do offer that, well, maybe they'll end up having a better time with the tool than they have been. So
it's about balance, moderation, and it's about taking the child as an individual and their individual needs, right? So, children do need some challenge and some danger and some new experiences that they're not 100% sure how to handle, so they can learn what to do in those cases, not to the extent that they're doing child labor, right? That would be too much. Not to the extent that we're sending them into the woods for 3 days at 5 years old.
Right.
You got to have some balance, right? Okay, I did have one more question I wanted to throw in, just because my mom's best friend asked me to. So she works with children, and particularly disabled children, developmentally and mentally disabled children, and she wanted to know if there's a different way that kids who have disabilities interact with screens, if there should be different rules for using devices for self-soothing if they already have a disorder, or if it compounds the problem. She's thinking about a nonverbal child who communicates using the tablet, that kind of thing.
Right. And I have some patients who use augmentative communication with their tablets, and so that's just part of who they are. And so if that is an extension of themselves in terms of how they communicate, I think we have to, it's a different kind of dynamic than a child who's choosing to pick it up and then just scroll or whatever. It's a very different thing. But again, it's what's the purpose of the tablet? Is it that they are using it to communicate? Are they using it to for educational purposes, or because those are fine if they're supervised and they're appropriate? But what is the child doing? If it's a self-soothing thing, are they just watching these short videos, and that's creating this sense of wanting more? Or can we provide them something different on the same tablet?
Right. Because it would be different, right? If you're having a problem with your regulation and you're using the tablet as a way to tell your guardians about what's happening with you, or you're using it to like externalize the feeling that you're having, maybe draw a picture in the little paint app, right? That's different from saying, I'm upset, so I'm going to watch a bunch of YouTube shorts and then I can just clock out and not be part of it. So that's interesting. Yeah. Again, like Trent said, it's a tool, and you can use the tool for building, or you can use the tool for destruction.
Right. And then what I wanted to mention too, as you were talking about, how we want to give kids these opportunities to explore, going back to, as parents, we have to do the same. Because we have all these nice rules and guidelines and time frames and age ranges and things like that, but parents have to do the same. And so if we model those things for our kids, then that's going to generalize.
Yeah, my kids have seen me try a new skill and do a really bad job and get upset and then pick myself up and try it again. So that's probably good for them to watch me go through the whole cycle, including the upset part, because you have to know that that's part of learning a new skill.
100%.
Yes. There'll be doll makers one day as well.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. No, because I've filled our house with dolls, so there's no more room for dolls. They can't make it anymore. They have to come up with a different thing to do.
Well, Dr. Melissa Paoni, again, we really appreciate you spending some time with us, educating us a bit about technology, about children in technology, about social media and ourselves, about why we just want to make the children self-soothe. We got to help them soothe. We have to be a part of that soothing process. And certainly, Dr. Paoni, will you come back sometime and do this thing all over again with us?
Sure. I appreciate it.
Good. I have more anxious mom questions to ask, so I'll just save those for the next.
Dr. Paoni, thank you so much again. And to all of our listeners, you know that understanding a question is half an answer, and this is, of course, half the answer with Trent R. Nelson and Caitlin M. Green. And we hope that you all have an absolutely marvelous day, and we'll catch you real soon.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Half the Answer, presented by Liberal Currents. You can find Half the Answer anywhere you get your podcasts. Liberal Currents is an entirely listener and subscriber-funded publication, which includes programs like Half the Answer and Neon Liberalism. So, if you like what you've heard and wish to contribute, you may do so at liberalcurrents.com and through Patreon. And remember, understanding a question is half the answer.